we were being led into a very vile and vicious political conmanship.
There are no secrets based on 2013. The president won the election. And in fact, if he wants to, at no cost,
Friends turned foes. Former TNA boss Johnson Sakaja hits out at a law over 2013 poll remarks.
We shall proceed to jail on Thursday if there are no solutions.
No retreat, no surrender. KMPDU officials now accuse government of being insincere. And leaders intensify their campaigns for voters' registration exercise. And drama as a head teacher is caught and caned for allegedly molesting schoolgirls. And tonight we have an eminent panel of guests today to take a look at the first week of voter registration and all of the allegations of rigging that we have heard so far. This is Checkpoint. Let's get the show started. Thank you for making the time to be with us. That eminent panel we're talking about, Professor Peter Kagwanja, we have Dr. Adam Zolo and Daisy Amdanyi. They will be discussing those issues. Over the first week of the voter registration exercise, you can weigh in as well. The hashtag on social media is Checkpoint and the SMS number is 22155. Thank you for making the time. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole and our sign language interpreter is Meresha Owiti. Now, former TNA National Chair Johnson Sakaja and the party's former Secretary General Onyango Olo are now locked in a bitter war of words over the latter's claims that President Uhuru Kenyatta rigged his way to the presidency in 2013. Sakaja dismissed Olo's claims as false, saying he was not among the then members of the strategic team. But even as the two former allies locked horns, a section of opposition leaders say they will boycott the elections if the voters' register was not audited. Murimi Mwangi reports.
Asante sana. Close to 4 years after President Uhuru Kenyatta lifted the presidential trophy in one of the country's most hotly contested elections, a bitter feud has erupted between Kenyatta's former staunch allies in his National Alliance Party TNA, Johnson Sakaja, and the now rebel former party Secretary General Onyango Olo. This after Olo made sensational claims to the effect that President Kenyatta rigged his way to the presidency.
Every action has got consequences and we are willing to pay for the consequences. In the wild, there are animals that hunt and there are animals that eat what others have hunted. We hunted together, we killed the animal, but when it was brought, the hyenas, which were never there when we were hunting, have come and taken it all from us.
Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto won the 2013 elections, and there is no doubt about that. That is a matter that was put to rest. And anyone trying to insinuate otherwise, is only trying to push a very myopic, personal, political agenda to find relevance within the opposition.
Olo, who has since decamped to the ODM party, has claimed that he, together with Kenyatta's strategists, oversaw the manipulation of figures during the tallying of the 2013 presidential results. But Sakaja has now dismissed Olo as a political bickerer who was nowhere near the strategy team.
These secrets that he claims he has no secrets whatsoever. And we have nothing to hide. There are no secrets based on 2013. The president won the election. And in fact, if he wants to, at no cost, we can give him a fully paid space in the media for him to say whatever he knows.
My conscience does not allow me to continue in that environment. I have had I have 28 counties behind me who are ready to join me.
Ukihama chama ama ukiachana na bibi yako, si lazima uanze kusema vile yeye ni mchawi na yeye ndio mama ya watoto wako. Kwanza kusema yeye alijua alikuwa hata ni mchafu, haogi, kwa sababu mmeachana.
But with only 197 days remaining to the next poll, a section of opposition politicians have raised a red flag over the credibility of the poll. Siaya Senator James Orengo and GEM MP Jakoyo Midiwo are worried over the voters' register and want it audited.
We will not allow elections with a dirty and unclean voter register. We are not going for elections if the election law and the process leading towards the elections are not accountable, are not transparent, are not verifiable, and are not accurate. We are not going to do that.
The audit of the register has stalled since December last year, after the opposition coalition code moved to the High Court to challenge the award of the tender to KPMG audit firm. While the standoff over the credibility of the 2013 results has been on for 4 years now, the Sakaja-Oloo feud over alleged manipulation of registered voters' figures in 2013 no doubt tilts the spotlight on the yet-to-be-conducted voters' register audit, whose case is still before court. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News in Nairobi.
Now, with just 4 days left to the start of their 1-month jail sentence, officials of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union now say they are ready to go behind bars if talks to end the strike fail. Speaking in Komarok, Nairobi today, the medics insisted the government was not keen on resolving the impasse.
With the doctors' strike now entering its 49th day today, officials of their union KMPDU hit the road seeking divine intervention in a church at Komarok, Nairobi.
When people are dying because of starvation, it's not right. It's not right. When people are dying because there are no doctors in the hospitals, it's not right.
Yeah. Together with the entire team of independent spiritual observers, to request the government to unconditionally negotiate and pay doctors and nurses as per the earlier agreement.
With the prayers done, the doctors were back to their hardline stance, maintaining that the 1-month suspended jail sentence staring down at them and taking effect this Thursday will not weaken their resolve.
We shall proceed to jail on Thursday if there are no solutions. And for us, we are proud to do that, because if that is what we need to do to improve the healthcare system in our country, then we will do it. But we also pray that we do not have to get to such a situation.
Over the previous week, the government had offered a negotiation package including a 40% increase on allowances with a 10,000 shilling risk allowance offer and call allowance raised from 30,000 shillings to 66,000 shillings. With this on the table, the medics still read discrimination and mischief.
Yesterday you saw TSC released 54 billion for teachers. So we are wondering why the government cannot release only 8 billion for doctors. Is it that doctors are not Kenyans? You know, we are also wondering, and those are the kind of issues we want us Kenyans to pray for. We ourselves are praying for government to soften their stand.
In familiar pattern for the past 6 weeks, doctors have clung to their 2013 collective bargaining agreement, and they maintain a better pay package will translate to better service delivery through improved training of medics, adequate personnel, and a better working environment for the good of all Kenyans. However, the anticipated jailing of KMPDU officials has been looming ominously large since last week's sentencing by Justice Helen Wasilwa.
I sentence you for 1 month in jail, suspended sentence, which will fall down. The sentence is hanging on your head. It will fall down on your head within 2 weeks if the strike is still on.
In the meantime, most public hospitals continue to make do without medical doctors. Mark Namaswa, KTN News.
Now, on his 4th day since he started his voter mobilization exercise in the Mount Kenya region, President Uhuru Kenyatta joined worshippers at the Our Lady of Consolata Catholic Cathedral in Nyeri town. During the Mass that was led by Archbishop Peter Cairo, the President reminded Kenyans the importance of exercising their democratic right by registering as voters in the ongoing exercise. The President urged Kenyans to register in large numbers and decide the direction in which they want to see the country take. President Uhuru began the exercise on Thursday by first touring Murang'a County, followed by Isiolo, Nyeri and Meru counties. And in Bungoma, ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi appealed to opposition leaders to join hands and remove the Jubilee government from power. Mudavadi argues that he has what it takes to beat President Uhuru Kenyatta in the elections. He spoke after receiving several defectors from Moses Wetangula's Ford Kenya.
Foundation yetu kwa kisiasa ni kuhakikisha kwamba yale yote tunatenda kwa kisiasa tunatenda kwa njia ya amani. Jambo la pili, mimi nataka niwasihi waumini wote ambao wako hapa siku ya leo kwamba tafadhali tusaidie kuhakikisha kwamba watu wanaenda kwa kituo kujiandikisha, wajiandikishe wawe wapigaji kura. Njia ya kuonyesha demokrasia ni watu kupiga kura na kuamua kiongozi wao ni nani.
Now, a forensic audit of the voters' register ranks among the top priority assignments for the newly reconstituted IEBC. The opposition says the register is compromised and wants the commission to hire a reputable international firm to clean it. In the Spotlight 2017 tonight, a former commissioner with the electoral body, Ambassador Jack Tumwa, says Chebukati's team should move with speed and agree on a firm that would audit the voters' register. Patrick Amimo has more.
The road to the August 2017 poll has been marred by challenges, from the rules of engagement to push and pull over procurement of electoral equipment and other related material. Late last year, IEBC Chief Executive Officer Ezra Chiloba signed a deal with KPMG firm to audit the voters' register. The audit was to last a month, starting 19th of last December. But the opposition moved to court and stopped the tender award. The opposition claimed KPMG is not professionally qualified to audit a political register. The commission was to submit the audit report to Parliament on 1st of February this year and implement the audit recommendations by 17th February according to the election laws. That timeline will have to be reviewed.
The matter, of course, is in court, and we have no control over that matter. As we speak, we do not know when that case will be concluded. We do not know when we'll start the audit.
The opposition says there exist serious flaws in the voter register. Code Core principals Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka have cited cases of double registration of voters. They want the register cleaned up to stop ghost voters from participating in the elections. Former Electoral Commissioner Jack Tumwa says a clean register is vital for credible polls.
We know how our courts operate. It may take us another 1 year before that case is settled. I would like to request the new commissioners that they take that as a first assignment, invite all the political parties with a possibility of persuading those who went to court to withdraw from court so that they can have a mutual understanding between political parties and get the audit to be done and done quickly, because we are getting late.
The opposition claims the irregularities in the voter register are a pre-rigging scheme by Jubilee. The duty to clean the register now rests with Chebukati and his 6 commissioners.
Please fast-track those cases which have been filed in court, which are an embedment to the process which IEBC is carrying on. The cases which are holding IEBC from progressing towards the general election.
That I can assure you that we will do our best to have those cases finalized as quickly as possible.
In December, IEBC advertised a tender for the supply, delivery, installation, testing and support of the Kenya Integrated Electoral Management System that will be used to electronically identify voters and for transmitting results. The tender applications were to be opened last week, but one of the bidders filed a complaint before the Public Procurement Administrative Review Board. The commission was directed to extend the closing date for the tender to 2nd February. The Commission wanted to have the system installed and tested ahead of the public verification of the voter register, which was slated for April.
The review board directed that we now advertise the extension of the opening day for a period of 14 days. So our 7 days now became 14 days. That is going to eat into our timelines.
During the last election, one of the excuses why these kids didn't work well was that people had not been sufficiently trained. It calls for all the political parties to be truthful, to want to be just, to want to assist the IBC to give a free and a fair, credible election.
The ruling coalition and the opposition are divided over a backup system that will manage elections. The amended electoral laws 2015 propose a complementary system that is simple, transparent, secure, and verifiable.
Before we go for the elections, the commission, the chairman, should again convene a meeting with the major political parties and discuss this particular issue. Which backup are we going to accept? Which backup are we going to test in time so that we are all going for election knowing there is this particular backup? The backup that I think will abuse our election is the manual where you will call for the black book.
My commission shall operate an open door policy. Anybody with an issue, please come and see us. Those with current and future disputes, don't rush to court. Let's talk about it first.
Patrick Amimo, KTN News.
Now, a head teacher is being held by police in Eldoret for allegedly defiling schoolgirls under his care. There was drama as irate residents at Kapsaos village in Uasin Gishu caned the suspect over the allegations of defiling 3 girls. And as Elvis Kosgei reports, the Cheptebo Primary School head teacher allegedly enticed the pupils with goodies.
It was the proverbial 40 days for this school-head teacher when parents and residents of Queenette in Uasin Gishu County descended on him for allegedly taking advantage of innocent young girls he's supposed to take care of in his school.
Mwingine ametambua mwingine, alafu mwingine huyo akatambua yangu. Sisi tu kukua tunajua hii wadogo, tulikuwa tunajua tu huyu mkubwa.
Kwa klasi sijui anaambia nini akiwa klasi, watoto wanaonaje huyu mwalimu kwa darasa. Vile tumeenda hivi huyu mwingine tumetambua mwingine mwenye hatukuwa tunajua.
Ametuharibia watoto, tunaona atamaliza watoto wote. Amekuwa ni fisi nyang'ao mkubwa mwenye anamaliza watoto wetu. Hakuna uponyaji hapa. Tujui ni ukimwi, kaburi zimejaa kwa poma, tujui. Aondoke leo.
And for that, he had to pay for his sins. The children aged between 12 to 16 years positively identified the man after he was paraded before the irate villages who were baying for his blood.
Walipokushika kwa force akakuingiza kwa nyumba. Akaanza kukuvua manguo. Kufanua tu hapo.
Akaanza kunifua na akanilazimisha, alafu kumaliza akaniambia toka na ujiende nyumbani.
Nikakataa, nikaambia mama yangu atalipa. Akaanza kunidanganya tena nipenda. Mpaka akanishika, nilikuwa nikipita kwa barabara.
Sasa alikwambia usiseme. Na mlipokuwa mkilala
aliniambia nisiseme kwa shule tutakutana na yeye.
When cornered, the suspect admitted having an affair with a 16-year-old Form 2 girl and other minors.
Nini yani ilikuwa inakusukuma mpaka unaona?
Damu kuchemka kwa damu. Na pia labda ni kuingiliwa kwa shetani kwa sababu unajua shetani huwezi jua vile inaingilia mtu.
Sasa nimeita polisi, tumekuja na tumepata huyo mtu na yeye mwenyewe amekubali kuwa kitenda hiyo kitendo.
After a thorough caning, the suspect was handed over to the police who will carry out further investigations and take appropriate action. Elvis Kosgei, KTN News, Queenette area, Uasin Gishu County.
Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohammed today got a special treat from fellow women who are out to wish her well in her quest to become Africa Union Commission chairperson. Amina, who will be facing 4 other candidates for the position, was hosted to a luncheon by senior women in government circles, including First Lady Margaret Kenyatta. Najma Ismail with that story.
It was an afternoon of friends getting together for laughter, scrumptious meal and some good music. The Friends of Cabinet Secretary Ambassador Amina Mohammed, led by Zara Bahlewa Moi, who sits on the board of the Tourism Research Institute, and Alex Kabiru, the executive assistant of Ambassador Amina Mohammed, got together and surprised the AU nominee ahead of the AU elections scheduled for the end of this month. The event was graced by First Lady Margaret Kenyatta, Cabinet Secretary for Defense Rachel Omamo, Lady Justice Njoki Ndungu, among others. All of them who spoke highly of Amina Mohammed.
When I had my little boy, I had a lot of challenges because I had not breastfed my little girl. And breastfeeding for the first time can be an amazing challenge, even for a Supreme Court judge. And Amina came, took one look at me, and the next day she brought me all these Somali dresses with zips in front so that you can easily breastfeed, and a number of other things.
God has a special room for you, and He will do great things for you. So God has got the plans that He has for you. Nobody else will falter them.
I don't know what to add to what these beautiful ladies, how they've described you, how they've explained their experiences of being with you from many years ago. I only know you more recently, but I can tell you, Amina, to me, you're an inspiration, and you're also one of my mentors.
The organizer, Mrs. Moi, was confident that the CSO captured the position because she has what it takes. The Sunday afternoon luncheon at the Lord Erogome restaurant consisted of a 6-meal course and several performances from the traditional dancers. CS Amina, who was fronted by President Uhuru Kenyatta, is seeking to succeed the incumbent African Union's Dlamini Zuma in elections that take place in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, this coming weekend.
Like all of you, I think I was just as pleasantly surprised when His Excellency the President nominated me for this other position. And I can tell you we've worked really hard. The President, he's worked so hard on this. I don't think he ever likes to fail. He's really worked hard on it. He's spared no effort. Yeah. He's done everything that anyone in his position could have done to clinch this for Kenya.
5 candidates are competing for the position of the AU chair. Najma Ismail, KTN News.
Uasin Gishu women representative aspirant Gladys Boschele has called upon border operators to reclaim their position by providing efficient services. Speaking in Kapsoya during the launch of Ainap Kakoi Boda Sako, Shele urged border operators to avoid being misled by political leaders to push their political agenda.
Kama unavaa reflector ya politician, wewe ni billboard. Lazima walipe. Yes, wasikie vizuri. Na nimewaeleza mara mingi, you're a billboard. Kama mko na sako, you can negotiate fees of how much you should be paid so that you can wear the reflector bearing someone's name, including myself, for the week. So they should be business people, because no billboard and no space, even in the newspapers, comes for free.
All right, so we are in the era of political campaigns ahead of August 8th, 2017, and right in the middle of a voter registration exercise. There's just 1 week to go. That is the focus of our discussion in the next few minutes. Take a look at my guests. They're all ready to debate a number of the issues we have seen coming up over the last week or so. We have Professor Peter Kagwanja, we have Dr. Adam Zolo, we have Daisy Amdanyi. Please do weigh in. The hashtag is Checkpoint. The SMS you can send it to, your thoughts to 22155. We will be back in just a short while, so do stay with us. All right, welcome back to Checkpoint. We thank you for staying with us. Keep your comments coming in. The hashtag is Checkpoint. Our discussion, you can weigh in. Please feel free to do so. The SMS number is 22155. Let me reintroduce my panel to you tonight. We have Dr. Adam Zolo. Thank you very much. He's a political scientist and senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi. We have Daisy Amdanyi. Thank you so much, coordinator of the National Women's Steering Committee, and Professor Peter Kagwanja, who's the CEO of the African Policy Institute. Thank you, lady, gentlemen. Let's start with you, Prof. The last 1 week of voter registration. What's been your take? We'll get into, a number of things that have been said. But let's start with the fact that we've got, politicians from either side going around the country and mobilizing their numbers. And some say this should be left strictly to the IEBC, that it's campaigning in the process of voter registration, which is itself supposed to be a neutral exercise. What do you think?
If we were to talk outside the normal Kenyan cynicism, I think it's a good exercise because in some countries, registering to vote and actually voting is a constitutional obligation. Mm-hmm. It is written in the law that you must take you must register as a voter if you reach a certain age, failure to which it's like not submitting your taxes.
Right.
Here, I think if it were not for the environment in which we live, we would be congratulating our politicians for basically taking the lead to turn Kenyans into citizens, because it is when you can vote, when you can decide who governs over you, when you actually become a citizen or exercise your citizenship. But the environment has changed in the sense that, since 2013, we've been talking about this tyranny of numbers. And people want to be sure that they are not oppressed by this tyranny of numbers. Then you bring out the numbers. Mm-hmm. So it's really a game of numbers.
Okay.
And that itself is becrowding a very, very important civic duty to get people to register to become citizens.
All right, and we'll talk about that obligation to vote, because that's also a debate that's come up in the last week or so. But before we get to that, you mentioned the tyranny of numbers. Dr. Lo, let's talk about that a little bit, because some have said that this is where the election will be won, in terms of who can get more of their supporters to register over the other. Do you think that is the case at the end of this exercise? Based on the numbers that we see, will we be able to tell who's going to win in August?
Basically, in politics, you can only get that person who has registered is the only person you can go and make vote. If that person has not registered, then they can be your supporter, they can come to your rally, they can sing your praises, but unless they register, they cannot vote. And I think that's the reason why you find that both sides of the political divide are making sure that when the campaign starts and when August 8th comes and people go to that ballot paper, there must be eligible people. So indeed, it is true that you can have so many followers, you can have so many supporters, you can have so many adherents, and as long as they don't have that vote, then they won't be of help to you on August 8th.
Yeah, but it's one thing to get registered as a voter, and it's yet another thing to show up at your polling station on the morning of August the 8th.
That's indeed true.
To vote.
That's indeed true. But you have to get that person to register first before you work on a strategy to make them vote.
All right.
Because even if you were to work on a strategy to make them vote and they're not registered, they won't be able to vote.
Some say this is what cost ODM in the last election. That was all about popularity, but not really about the numbers and the persons that would get registered to vote.
Well, I don't believe that, but I can tell you one thing for sure, that even if you go back to those 2013 numbers, there are quite a lot of evidence that indeed, and I think it has been shown, that there are so many, close to 2 million, which IEBC has never challenged, people who supposedly voted for the president alone and didn't vote for the other 5 seats. So until the day that IEBC will challenge that evidence that has been put out there, that there are people who supposedly voted only for the president, and we didn't see any ballot papers being returned for the other seats, we shall never believe that.
Okay, Daisy, Prof here talked about the environment in which, the voter registration exercise is taking place. Could you speak to that a little bit? I mean, there's been, allegations in just week one, alone about rigging. There have been some irregularities that have been reported by political leaders themselves. Speak to us about the environment in which we find ourselves in during this process.
Well, I think that the politicians have brought a lot of excitement, the excitement of the campaigns into the environment. And it is true that there are some glaring irregularities that have been found, which are very serious and need to be addressed. I mean, you have cases of people going to register to vote and finding their ID registered as somebody else, in the voter system. We also have the situation where it is becoming evident that the system, the IBC registration system, is not networked, so that if you register in one place, it will not show if you are registered in somewhere else. So that can also create situations where you have cases of double registration. So there are many issues that are coming out now that I think IBC will have to address themselves to, particularly with regards to the integrity of the voters register, but also that environment that you're talking about. And like some of the sentiments that Professor Kagwanja here has just put out, which are these allegations that are made, or perceptions that are thrown out there, or statements that are thrown out there to create certain perceptions, like, for instance, that you will know who will win the election at the end of the voter registration period, or the tyranny of numbers. Because I think these are statements that we don't interrogate very well, because the last time there was this so-called tyranny of numbers, and apparently the tyranny of numbers has somehow dissipated. Now, even from a statistical point of view, you don't just lose your tyranny just like that. So either a tyranny was never there, or something has happened to kill that tyranny of numbers. The other thing is, when you begin to say things like, you will know who has won the election based on the number of registered voters in the perceived strongholds of certain parties, then you assume that everybody who registers as a voter turns up to vote, which is not necessarily the case.
And turns up to vote for this specific
this specific party, which is not the case. Because even when you talk about so-called strongholds, there are areas where you will find they are populated by people from outside areas. Because remember that the elections are going to be taking place during August, so a lot of people are going to be in their workstations, not necessarily in their grassroots areas. So I think that there are so many dynamics, and to just paint them with one brush then begins to set us up for creating perceptions that are not real and that we don't interrogate deeply. Because as it is already, we definitely have serious problems with the integrity of the register. Even when you talk about auditing the register, we know that during the Supreme Court case, the IBC produced 3 registers. So which register is being audited? There's also the case that Dr. Olo has talked about. So there are still many issues with regard to the integrity of the voters register, the auditing of the voters register, and the registration exercise with regard to 1, the registration of persons, 2, double registration of persons, 3, networking of IEBC, and their registration systems, and the procurement of equipment, especially when we see that, there's been a strong fight for manual identification of voters. You see, if you have at least electronic identification of voters, you'll be able to get rid of a lot of these challenges.
All right, and Prof, you wanted to weigh in because I see you reacting to that. Let's talk about the integrity of that. Kalonzo Musyoka just last week raised certain issues with his registration and the use of his ID number for a certain Salome Njoroge. and he talked of a rigging scheme, he and the Wiper Party. Prof, what do you think of that? And we'll get to IEBC's response in just a moment. Some Kenyans were saying, well, if this is happening with Kalonzo Musyoka, he's a bit more known. What about, you know, other lesser-known Kenyans here?
Let me tell you, we've talked about the environment, and I think we'll have to stay with that concept of the environment within which our election is taking place. Elections are not about truth. Elections are not about reading verses in the Bible to convert people to some saintly beliefs or something. Elections are about strategies of how to win. Elections have, in modern times, are the equivalent of war. And therefore, people use all manner of strategies to position themselves. I see in this election as rigging as a strategy. And the moment you claim that there is rigging, you claim again and again, it becomes the truth. The role of cleaning all these registers, including if you go to the US, UK, and everywhere, cleaning the register is a continuous process. Even during the day of voting, God forbid, certain Kenyans in the register will lose their lives. Therefore, even in the hour of voting, somebody will be passing on to his creator. Now, so the register cannot be 100% pure. Of course, when there are egregious issues, it's the role of IEBC and the Commission generally to ensure that we have a clean roll. And that register should be available to Kenyans. And I think this is what
but it will
demand.
Be available,
it should be available to Kenyans.
For 1 month.
The problem we are having is when the politicians turn themselves into candidates and also they turn themselves into the Commission. Because you are the one who is screaming about this, when we have a neutral arbiter.
So you think the claims of rigging is a strategy
they are sensational, then they are not their strategies to win. They are strategies to ensure that there is paralysis at the end. This election is supposed to be very closely contested. I don't think so. The government has maintained the numbers it had. Now, let's very quickly take the arithmetic. The numbers from the Jubilee strongholds alone, if you look at them, and I'm not talking about the tyranny of numbers, the Jubilee stronghold, not talking about the depredation they have made in the opposition stronghold, are enough to push them to power without a runoff. But the problem is, if they go to power without a runoff, they are in 2017 and 2022. And that is not very good for opposition politicians, some of whom are in their 70s. And who not be eligible in 2022.
Okay. All right.
Therefore, you have to stop the Jubilee in its tracks. And how do you do it? Rigging strategy.
Okay, let's hear from Dr.
I think I couldn't disagree, especially when somebody with the title of professor doesn't tackle the issue with facts. When you find Kalonzo Musyoka saying that he has sent his request for verification to an IEBC SMS number, and he finds that somebody else with a name who is alive with an ID is also registered with the same ID, then for sure alarm bells must come up. Let me give you an example.
Is it a rigging scheme?
In fact, let me just tell you.
Or could it be an isolated incident?
No, let me just tell you. Yvonne Okwara, I'm sure you have an email address, either in Gmail or Yahoo. And when you go to register your email address, let's say, for example, Yvonne Okwara at gmail.com, and somebody else has used that name, Yvonne Okwara at gmail.com, what will it do? It will reject, isn't it? That this name is already in use. So, for the purposes of registration, the ID is the identification, first identification tool, not the name, because there can be so many Peter Kagwanjas. The only thing which will separate Peter Kagwanja A and Peter Kagwanja B registering is the ID number. And therefore, the moment a person sharing the same ID tries to register, and one had already registered, automatically the default system should reject Why is it that this registration process of IEBC doesn't have a default system? It could only have been set up not to have it. Otherwise, it would have been rejecting. If that is not rigging, Professor, tell us what it is.
Yeah, but that's what.
And if IEBC cannot come and explain to us why is it that their system doesn't have a default system, then IEBC has a problem.
Why should IEBC be rigging at this early hour, and for who?
Oh,
no. I think it goes to...
Please. Rigging doesn't start on the day of the election.
But why should it rig for anybody?
Is a process. And let me tell you again, Yvonne, the reason why Kagwanja's party, he said that they are planning for 2022. The reason why they would want to rig in advance is the same psychological warfare they used in 2013, that we have the tyranny of numbers. We are preparing. They want a predetermined election. And therefore, what we are saying, is that the IEBC, rather than waiting for people to come out and say that there are double registration, they should in advance tell us that this is the problem. If it is them coming to tell us, rather than waiting for other people to mention it, then we are going to have a problem.
We'd like to interrogate that rigging scheme, but Prof, you want to weigh in? Yes.
Professor, I am not a member up to this point of Jubilee Party. So when you say
don't have to be a member.
Kagwanja's party, but ideologically, I'm aligned to them. So
that's what I meant.
Party, but let's make that point very clear, because it is, it's one thing to say so and so's party, and another one for one to say.
Okay, where you are aligned to, if that will.
Not ideologically, kind of. Ideologically, we agree.
Fair enough.
But then the other point is, Professor has not invalidated my point that all these claims are there. In fact, let's admit the voters' roll might be dirty. Right? But why should a politician go out in public and sensationally make these claims? I am saying this is part of a political strategy to use rigging claims in order to create paralysis at a certain stage and question the validity of a winner. That's it. So that you can have power sharing arrangement.
Yvonne, let me weigh in. Let me weigh in on this, because I think that Professor Kagwanja is among those that are throwing out those very dangerous statements and perceptions, including some of our politicians. IBC have a responsibility to the citizens of Kenya, not to any particular political party or political affiliation or any politician. They have a responsibility to safeguard the voice of Kenyans and the decision that Kenyans make. And the starting point is a register that is clean and a process that has integrity. Now, already the exercise is showing that there are some serious problems, okay? And there are genuine fears that it may be a rigging scheme. And those are fears that are not unfounded, because the IEBC, not as presently constituted, but as an electoral body, has been used to rig elections and produce results for certain individuals and political parties.
I'd like us to talk about the specific allegation that Dr. Olo is also bringing up, saying that, it should be geared towards the ID number. And if it doesn't, there's a problem in the system. Fair enough. But to go a step further and to say that this could only have been made to happen in this way, and that it's been made to sort of reject this and allow for double registration using the same ID number, that's a bit of a stretch beyond giving some serious proof.
I don't think it's a stretch. I don't think it's a stretch. I don't think it's a stretch.
Let me explain.
Because systems
let's hear from Daisy and then we'll come to you.
Systems are programmed.
Yes.
You program a system to respond in a certain manner, so that...
And there might not be a chink in the system? I mean, I'm not speaking for IBC here,
either that the system
going into an allegation like that.
No, it is either that the system is not programmed for that. And that is a question that we are asking, because the thing that you use to identify, to register, is identification documents. And there are only two identification documents that IBC agree to, or rather you can legally register with. Either a national ID or a passport. Now, you cannot have two numbers, two identical ID numbers or passport numbers for different persons.
All right.
Okay, now that's what is coming out. There are, and it's not just. It is not just. It is not just Kalonzo Musyoka. There are other Kenyans who have actually suffered the same. Okay, and these are things that are coming up because we are also carrying out civic education, and people are asking. People say, I went to register and I found my name, my ID card registered as a voter
somebody else's
under
name.
somebody else's
Let's
name.
hear from Adam Zolo before we come to you.
In fact, in Embakasi, one of the Embakasi constituencies, there are gentlemen who were in the NYS program. And you remember IEBC had loaned its biometrics to NYS, and they said that they wouldn't use it in this exercise, that those biometrics that they used to register people in the NYS that they loaned to the devolution ministry wouldn't be used. These 5 gentlemen, when they went to register this week, they found that their IDs had already been used to register other people, and as we talk now, they can't be able to register. That is how serious it is, Yvonne. It's not about Kalonzo Musyoka or Raila Odinga. It is about the people
You're raising
of Kenya.
some serious allegations?
Yes. No, I have no problem with those allegations, to be honest with you. Even me, if I went today and found my number is not there, I would be very concerned. But it is how the concerns are raised. Because politics is about how you articulate issues. It is not about
and we are
what you
going to
articulate. Let me put it this way. The moment you decide to sensationalize something, because after February, when the registration is over, what is the next exercise? The next exercise is to clean the register. And we have the principles of all political parties who can even call a conference or even themselves take their team to IBC to see whether the register is called. Why are we sensationalizing it when the registration process is going on? The whole issue is, and why one party? Why is it the
because
opposition
the other one is
and not
benefiting.
the government? Now, then we have 2 fallacies here. One, that the entire register is compromised. Then building on that fallacy, you say that the government or the ruling party is a compromise in that. And therefore, we have the third fallacy, which is that this is a scheme for 2013. These are explications upon explications upon...
Can I respond to that?
Yes, and I'd like to, very quickly, because we're running out of time,
You
I'd
see,
like to introduce another...
Peter Kagwanja is not in government. He might be by another design, I don't know.
Yes.
But we have a situation in which the president, who is the head of state, as head of government, we allow him to politic because his party formed the government. But he's the head of state. And he came out very clearly, for example, and said that IDs should be processed faster and that the provincial administration should come in and help. Then the Minister for Interior comes in and says that any chief in opposition stronghold found helping in listing voters shall be fired or even transferred. What do you say to that, Peter Kagwanja?
Well, you're asking me, like,
because you are defending them, but he's defending them.
No,
so he's
I'm
the
not
one who can now...
Well, you're also, to be fair, defending the other side.
I'm calling for logic here. That one, we differentiate technical processes that are by law entrusted among within IEBC. These are questions we should be asking, and political processes, which is about winning the hearts and minds of Kenyans in whichever way for 2017. We must throw this
Prof, allow me to interject, because the process of, auditing the voter register is something that was, agreed upon. And in fact, KPMG,
and it's in the law.
The audit firm, it's in the law, and was contracted to do this process. And then this process goes to court, and that has now been stopped. And many say, well, ODM is shooting itself in the foot, going to court with that process, asking for an international firm. What is the specific problem that ODM has with KPMG auditing this voter register?
Look, even when they debated, and you can bring members of the panel who are there from both sides, they agreed that the firm to do these audits must be one that not only has capacity and that has done it elsewhere. You can't just go and pick any audit firm that is used in financial audit and bring to audit the voter register. That's number one. Number two, at the time that CORD went to court and when it was just one day to KPMG starting the audit, the stakeholders that you keep on talking about, and CORD is a stakeholder, had not discussed the methodology, had not been brought into the table to agree on the methodology of auditing this register. For example, did this audit of the register, was it going to involve a sample? Was it going to involve everybody going to confirm their biometrics because that's the way we were registered? Was it going to involve even those who would have been registering right now because there'll be fresh registration? Those issues needed to have been addressed. None of them was addressed. And here you are telling KPMG to go ahead without any capacity, without any methodology, without any experience. Come on, please. The one that was done in Nigeria removed 7.5 million voters from the register. That's how serious an audit usually is.
Yes, and I do want to agree because I think that, first of all, given the fact that the political pillar is a very critical pillar to the stability of the social and economic pillar, you cannot just gloss over issues. And having that it was agreed that the voter register should have been audited, is to be audited, I think that in good faith demands that the process should have been done by an audit firm that has the expertise in auditing voter registers, because it's not just about auditing, you know. And so, you know, when these are the kind of things that the kind of actions that make people read ill intent in some of these things. Because if you are committed to ensuring that you have a free, fair and transparent process, it begins by ensuring that every player is comfortable. And it would have costed them absolutely nothing to involve all stakeholders. And it's not just about Jubilee or CORD, because remember that you have the PPLC, the Political Parties Liaison Committees, where you have parliamentary political parties and non-parliamentary political parties, at the very least, because these are the parties that are usually involved in ensuring, you know, the electoral regulatory framework and all that. These parties should have all been brought on board as equal players, you know, in the forthcoming general election. But when you have one side that apparently seems to have advantage over another, and IEBC being careless enough not to involve all stakeholders, people automatically read malice, and not without cause. All
right, so we're in this environment. This seems to be mistrust on both sides with this process. There's a lot of deadlines that have not been met, considering procurement, you know, the ballot printing process, and, you know, the procurement of the integrated electoral system. And yet there's talk, you know, in certain circles about making voting mandatory. You'd alluded to this in the beginning. Some countries are like, I believe Australia does it. But is this where we want to go now? Should we start to make it mandatory for people to register and to vote? And, you know, that whole saying of bad leaders are elected by good people that do not vote, it's becoming a bit of a cliche that's thrown around. But some people are also reading malice into mandatory voting. Others are saying it should be the way to go. What do you think, Prof?
I think in Kenya it's not necessary to make it mandatory at all, because I think the population in Kenya, from a long time ago, I think we are committed to the democratic process. Kenyans believe that through the democratic process you can build your society, and therefore they come out to vote. Some, I'm told, come, you know, when they are sick, they get from the hospital, come vote and go back. You know, so it's not necessary to make it law at this
Would it ever be necessary?
It may be in the future, but I don't think we reach that apathy. If you look at the voting in Nyanza in 2013, for example, a bit over an average of 91% voter turnout around that time. You look at other areas, Central and the Rift Valley, in the 90s. That is the highest ever registered in the world. And it was balanced. In Ukambani, it was the high 80s. Yeah. The coast, it was high 60s to the 70s. I mean, very few countries, even in the US, in the contestation that we have, they rarely go beyond 60. So Kenyans, we don't need mandatory voting. Okay. What we need is to de-ethnicize our voting patterns. What we have in this country now are what you can call, in Jamaica, they call it garrisoned communities. Garrisoned community because if you are, for example, within a certain region, you are under pressure to vote for certain people. And whether those people are forcing you or not, the community around you will either isolate you or feel like you are a traitor if you don't vote a certain way. I hope my daughters, I hope my sons, I hope my grandsons will be able to vote whoever they want to vote without feeling the pressure that they have to vote because they carry a certain name. Okay. And I think that's a burden that Kenya has to get off its back. Now, politicians are exploiting that. So when people start talking about my stronghold is a synonym for ethnic groups, which is a pity in the 21st century that a country claiming democratic credentials like Kenya will still hinge its democratic future on ethnic balkanization when most of us don't even know their tribes.
Okay. Where would we get to in your closing comments? Prof is talking about, where he hopes to see the country. There's a bit of voter apathy, perhaps, which is why we're talking about mandatory voter registration and mandatory voting. But where do you see us heading in this process?
Well, for as long as we continue with the ethnic mobilization, of course, it's not a sustainable approach to anything, because one of the things that ethnic mobilization does, it takes away the need for people to interrogate the leadership, because the only thing that I need to be is your tribesperson for me to qualify for leadership. I don't have to be a good leader. I don't have to deliver on my promises. The other thing is, while we have a blueprint in the Constitution of Kenya 2010 to actually take us to those new lands, the current crop of leadership, seeing as they continue with the ethnic mobilization, are not the right leadership to get us to where we need to go. Either that, or they have not internalized the principles. Some of the issues that would lead to voter apathy? Because Kenyans aren't. Kenyans, as Professor Kagwanja said, Kenyans really do. I mean, they get excited about the electoral process. And so far, we've not really seen voter apathy. When you look at turnouts, whether it was the referendum, whether it's elections, we still have high voter turnout levels. What it is I think that issues, because Kenyans are now beginning to make the connection between the kind of lives that they have and the kind of leaders that they choose.
And the policy.
And I think that for us now, for me, as long as we have leaders who continue to mobilize ethnically, they begin to lose the plot, because Kenyans can transform this country by demanding issues of their leaders. But the media also needs to help Kenyans make that connection by framing the issues, not framing the election around the ethnic mobilization or the zoning or the tyranny of numbers. Make it about issues so people begin to demand answers from their leaders. We have been given promises. We were given promises in 2013. Have you delivered? If you haven't, why should we believe anything that you're saying now? Okay. So I think that for me, as long as these guys, if we cannot compete with the current political class on ethnicity, because they're good at it. That's what they know how to do. What they don't know how to do is address issues. If we change our politics to issues-based politics, we will automatically sweep away the old crop of leaders and begin to get the new crop of leaders that will take us to the new lands as envisioned in the Constitution 2010.
Okay, Dr. Olo, your final comments, because I know you've talked about this. I read a paper that you had in the Twaweza publication, which has all of these papers regarding the 2013 elections, and you said basically the same thing about ethnicization of political parties, as it were, basically because there's no party in the country that has ideologies that are different from each other, that all of them are based on social democracy. So where does that leave us then?
Well, you see, what I was saying in that paper was that when you are doing political mobilization, you can either do it based on identity or ideas. When you're doing it on identity, the identity can either be tribe, it can be race, religion. It can be religion, it can be region, and so on. In Kenya, it has been tried. When you are basing it on ideas, then you go to ideology. So you are either social democrat, you are a liberal democrat. If you are a bad person, you are a fascist.
Yes, but you say, you know, but it was interesting in that paper that you said that no political party, and I think many Kenyans would say that they're not different in essence from each other.
What I basically said is that if you look at most political parties in Kenya, at least the manifesto, that's what you can judge them from, then they'll be following either one strand of social democracy or another, that the difference is in the detail. And once the difference is in the detail, then it places you in a straitjacket in which you can only isolate certain issues which you fight the fight on, and then placate on identity. And that's the reality in Kenyan politics.
Okay. You want to just wait 1 minute, sorry.
I think the identities that Professor is mentioning are critical, but I think he's ignoring the most critical one for 2017, which I think is the age, the generational. Why do I say so? The number that we are scrabbling for now to register are our sons and daughters born between 1989 and 1999, who constitute in total about 60.8% of our population. So we are not talking about the old generation. The old generation registered. A few of them might have passed away or missed registration. But this is the number. And this is a group that does not believe in this ethnic mongering or ethnic mobilization. This
Yet you still find they mobilize around the tribe, and they still do.
That is okay, but we can teach them. You talked optimistically about the future.
I talk about the future optimistically because for us, particularly as women, tribe does not favor women. Tribe is patriarchal.
2017.
It doesn't favor women, so we must move away from it.
2017 is about generational crash.
Well,
and those who are in the grandfathers, the fathers, and the son, and the grandsons.
That one needs a rebuttal.
You know who they are.
That needs a rebuttal. That generational change is a myth.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a myth.
It's a myth because those who came on digital platform, you can see they are forcing us back to analog. So you can exactly see that.
I think generational in terms of age.
Well, but generational in terms of age, but look at the people who voted for them, if it is about generational change.
Okay, clearly,
the old generation is voluntarily getting out to leave the younger generation. In other countries like Nigeria and Kenya, we are going back. That's what I'm saying.
In Ghana,
we are going back.
In Ghana, a 72-year-old has been overwhelmingly voted as a president.
It's about issues.
Gentlemen, ladies,
so it's issues.
Ideally, it should be about issues.
Yes.
But we definitely need, 2-3 hours to discuss this issue. But I thank you for your time and in hoping to see where we want to go. Thank you very much, Professor Peter Kagwanja, Daisy Amdani, and Dr. Adam Zolo.
Thank you.
What do you think? Weigh in. Quite a number of issues have come up in this one. Is it a generational issue? Will we be voting based on issues, manifestos? Do you see any differences there, even as you go towards registering to be a voter if you had not done so previously? Please weigh in on this discussion. The hashtag is Checkpoint. We'd love to hear from you. We're taking a quick break. We'll be right back. Thank you. All right, welcome back to Checkpoint. It's that time of the show where we take a look at the big number we'd like you to think about this week. And it's, of course, all about the drought in Kenya. You've heard about this for the last couple of weeks, actually the last couple of months, including late 2016. Now, this is a number you need to focus on. It's about apparently 1.3 million people who could be facing starvation. Now, this is a bit of a conservative estimate. Others have it at about 1.5. This is a number that we got actually from the Food and Agricultural Organization. But the next one, number that we want you to focus on, we got from the National Drought Management Authority. This is a worrying one. There have been no counties that received normal rainfall in December. 0 is the number of counties that received normal rainfall in December. Let me just quote that bulletin for you. It's the National Drought Management Authority's National Drought Early Warning Bulletin for the month of January 2017. Let me quote this for a moment. The short rain season has ended, but it was far too brief and weak to have any meaningful impact on recovery. Now, it's not just all counties. It's also the same case for the arid and semi-arid counties, which are 23 in number. And this is what they said. The amount was depressed of rainfall. The distribution was poor. Now, this becomes a crisis because it gives rise to what is known as a vegetation deficit, which is extreme in the counties of Kwale, Kilifi, and Lamu, and described as severe in Garissa, Isiolo, Mandera, Samburu, and Tana River, where more than 120,000 herders have lost their livestock. Now, what are some of the recommendations that the authority, the Drought Management Authority, is talking about? These are just some of them. They have prioritized 11 areas, but I've put down just 3 here. And they're saying if these areas are not met, and if urgent and appropriate action is not done, we might end up seeing that same drastic drought situation we saw in the year 2011. So these are just some of those recommendations. They're talking about scaling up the relief transfers to those in need, either in terms of food or cash. They're also talking about maximizing the benefits of the short rains by supporting proper harvest storage and also ensuring timely availability of inputs in advance of the next season. And they're also talking about the school feeding programs and scaling those up, and drought risk reduction measures, they say, in the next round of national and county planning and budgeting. So these are some of the areas they're saying we need to look out for to make sure, one, we don't get to 2011 scales, and also that we make sure that this doesn't happen again. This is a perennial problem. And let me just remind you, the report that came out that 2016 was the hottest year on record in the world. So this is something that is there. And remember, before that, 2015 was the hottest year on record at the time. So we just keep topping these up. And it seems like this is a global problem. So, of course, better planning, better budgeting is required by both national and county governments before this situation becomes even more dire than it is. That is your number for the week. All right, now, unless we forget tonight, we want to take you down memory lane. Now, 2 years ago this month, actually on the 19th, the country witnessed the dramatic pictures of students of Langata Road Primary School and activists protesting over the grabbing of their playground. The pictures you're about to see sent shockwaves that reverberated not just in Kenya, but around the world as well. More importantly, it brought public attention to the issue of land grabbing and the fact that thousands of public schools are vulnerable to this vice. The president responded, issuing a directive for all schools to be given title deeds. The Shule Yangu initiative that brings together stakeholders from government and the public and private sectors to accelerate the protection of public school land in all the 47 counties was born. The target was to have more than 10,000 schools issued with titles and another 5,000 fenced. Now, we've got new developments to report this past week, which may accelerate this process. An agreement has been signed to expedite the survey of public school land using private surveyors. With over 20,000 schools in need of protection, the team has a lot of work to do, and hopefully this time next year, there will be more progress to report. So, lest we forget, that was 2 years ago. It's hard to believe that those dramatic pictures happened on the 19th of January in the year 2015. Now, that is your trip down memory lane right here on Checkpoint. We're taking a short break. We would like to remind you that the sports news is coming up next, as well as My Take. You don't want to miss that. All right, time for the day's sports news. Now, Zetech University ladies basketball team is on the verge of promotion into the top-tier league after winning their second match in the finals in the best-of-5 series at the Nyayo Gymnasium here in Nairobi. Zetech Queens beat their opponents Strathmore University 55-46 after taking control of the first and second quarter on a score of 18-9 and 13-11 before taking a breather. On return, they lost their third quarter 8-16 but bounced back to win the fourth quarter 16-10, thereby sealing the final victory at 55-46. Now, with 2 wins already in the bag, Zetech ladies are only a win away from promotion. In another match, Umoja revived their hopes of winning this year's championship after evening the series against Zetech Titans, who won the first game of the series.
The first game was yesterday, we won. And today also game we won. It's a best of 5 series. We are looking to, out of 3 games remaining, we're looking for 1 win. It's going to be tough still. Strathmore is a good team. But we're also going back to our practice, and we are confident that out of 3, we will at least get 1.
12 players have been axed from the Sport Pesa All-Stars training camp that opened last Monday after visiting Hull City. Coaches trimmed the team following 6 days of rigorous training and assessment. Those dropped from the All-Stars team include Kakamega Homeboys player Ali Bai, Poster Rangers duo Calvin Odongo and Garrison Likono, and AFC Leopards Gabriel Andika. The final team of 18 players is set to be announced next Saturday in Nairobi.
We've identified quality amongst the Kenyan players. The criteria was more or less identified to suit possibly the European way or the English way of playing to combat that. And I'm sure that all the players selected will have a great learning experience culturally and obviously football-wise.
It's a tough week for us, and the coaches, it was not easy because we are the best players picked from the league. So you can just say you're the lucky one, you have to show it on the pitch. And luckily enough, I got noticed by the coaches through my hard work, and I'm happy to be selected to remain in the camp for the 27 players.
The week has been very successful, especially to the players, full of experience. The training has been very intensive, being conducted by the 2 trainers from Hull City, with a lot of learning moments to the players, and I believe that players have learned a lot, and they are going to implement it into Kenyan football, Premier League, as well as the national team.
All right, so let's take a look at some of your feedback tonight on our discussion. Council Muinde says we need a thorough audit of the electoral register that is trusted by all stakeholders. Mike Kado says we should have done all of these activities right after the 2013 election. And you say currently the whole process is operating under emergency timelines and every step is now prone to error and suspicion. Nelson Havi, you say voter register must be accurate and verifiable for a free, fair, transparent election. KPMG is not impartial. Here's another one. Yusuf Munyi saying government prioritizing voter registration above health. Its constitutional duty shows it's a fraud. And then Daniel Jumamundi, quoting what Daisy Amdani had to say, you say we need to change our politics from ethnic mobilization to issue-based politics. Those are your views. We thank you very much. Keep the conversation going. The voter registration exercise has 3 more weeks to go, so that's definitely a conversation we will be having. And there's also a little bit of something on that on My Take, which is up next. Thanks for your feedback. And so My Take tonight is about that ongoing mass voter registration exercise. Over the last week or so, we've seen politicians crisscross the country in an attempt to rally their bases to register in number. And that is great. We've also heard calls by the IEBC itself for all Kenyans of voting age to pick up their ID cards and do the needful. That too is great. That is because the right of every Kenyan adult to choose his or her leaders is enshrined in the Constitution. But the reason I'm talking about this issue tonight is because some overzealous Kenyans are taking this need to register a bit too far. In Vihiga, for instance, an official of the county government put out a circular directing county officers not to serve anyone who has not registered to vote. Can you imagine that? If you thought that was bad enough, the County Commissioner of Embu, Esther Minor, took this senseless zeal to a whole new level. The good lady said in broad daylight that she would arrest those who fail to register as voters. Never mind that she has no power to arrest anyone. But she went further to threaten to withhold food from those who will not have registered. Then she added this rather preposterous statement. Listen to this.
Niko na
sheria yangu ambayo itakuweka ndani. Tumekubaliana? Wangapi wameniahidi ikifika next week watakuwa na vitambulisho familia mzima? Mama amekataa kuinua mkono.
Well, madam, there is only one supreme law in the land. That law can do a lot of things. One thing it cannot and should not do is interfere with freedom of thought and the freedom of speech. The right to vote is an expression of one's freedom as enshrined in the Constitution. Choosing not to vote is also an expression of freedom. The freedom not to speak. When we don't vote, we don't speak. And that is a message in itself. But this national madness has now gone to ridiculous levels. There are reports that in Migori, border operators will not carry anyone who cannot demonstrate that they are registered to vote. And just today, get this, a certain pastor in Nairobi is said to have refused to preach his sermon until he could confirm that his congregants are on the IEBC register. Lord have mercy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's pause for a minute. This is no way to deal with voter apathy. In fact, being a registered voter isn't the only yardstick to being a citizen of this country. We must ask ourselves why people don't vote. Could it be that they don't like any of the candidates, or the campaign issues, or indeed the political parties? Or perhaps even it is that they're simply disillusioned by the political process. That too, folks, is their right. And my message tonight is simple. If you can't convince them, live and let live, for that is democracy. And that tonight is my take. Thank you very much for your views tonight and always. We appreciate your feedback. Continue to keep it coming. Mandatory registration, mandatory voting. Is that the way to go in this country? The conversation doesn't stop here. The hashtag to use on social media is Checkpoint. Thanks for watching. Our sign language interpreter was Maresha Owiti, and I am Yvonne Okwara Matole. Good night.